911, what's your emergency?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the PIO Podcast, a place to discuss all public information-related topics for police, fire, EMS, and local and federal government organizations.
It was a good learning experience for a lot of us that social media is not real life.
But we have to remember the media are very rarely a target audience. They're simply that conduit.
I think what's so interesting about this position too, and this job and this profession, is that every one of us is looking for purpose. And when we find it here, that's it.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. Today's episode, which is number 36 with Lauri-Ellen Smith from Cat5 Communications, will be the last of 2022. We'll be taking a short break to recharge, develop new content, and record new episodes for 2023. So enjoy the replays as they go through the remainder of December and mid part of January, and we'll see you on the other side in 2023. Have a safe and happy new year and enjoy the show. Good afternoon. Today on the PIO podcast, we have Lauri-Ellen Smith. Lauri, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you coming on. You have a very long career in public service. How did you get your start in the communications field?
I did the traditional thing. I went to the University of Florida, go Gators, and I majored in public relations. And there was no looking back. When you go to a university that has a great journalism communications college, you have these options. And I'll be very honest with you, I battled my weight my whole life. I saw myself on camera and I said, broadcast is not for me. Because those were back in the days when, let's face it, these people were starving themselves to death. So I looked around the college and there was PR, and I sat in and went to meet a professor and I said, I'm gone. I didn't realize there was this whole career where you spent your time helping reporters get the story. And that for me was just the ultimate turn on. So I joined PRSSA, which is the Student Trade Association. We go to conference, and I'm not going to say that the offers started flying in, but I was able to have some wonderful opportunities come my way and make a career out of it. Here we are 40 years later.
And what a career you've had. I saw in looking at your background that you ran a JIC for Super Bowl XXXIX. Not many people can. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, Robert, what a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I had the wonderful good fortune of working with a gentleman that we helped get elected. I was in hospital PR at the time, but I have always been politically active, worked on campaigns, now consult on campaigns. And I helped a friend become sheriff. And then he reached out to me and said, are you ready for a change? We've got the Super Bowl coming, and I need a public relations professional to lead the Joint Information Center. And I jumped into FEMA classes and started getting those certificates. And that's where I got really lit up about the fact that emergency management and crisis communication and public information are inextricably linked. And I loved it.
Absolutely. And what a great way to do it. Learning all about that as the ramp up to a Super Bowl.
Right. And here's the coup de grace. I mean, this was the real coup de grace. So 56 agencies, that's federal, state, and local, because it was a post 9/11 world,
right.
Had the privilege of, sitting in the command staff with an amazing fellow, Frank McAsee, who led the effort for the sheriff as the undersheriff. And I said, I want to do something that's never been done before. I want to create a website. Jacksonville, Florida was the smallest market that the NFL had ever given a Super Bowl to. And while it was our community, the reality of it is your community is going to be visited. I think the statistic was something like 98% of the people at the game that are in your town are not from there.
Right.
So you have to love your locals. That was an imperative from the sheriff. But you've also got to make a great guest experience happen. So I stood up a website with the permission of the NFL and some of our very talented IT folks at the city. And it got like 1.9 million hits over the course of the weekend. Everything from real-time traffic, the NFL blessed it. And so we got invited to come to GovSec and present. And I think it was the first time that a NFL football game had its own URL and its own. We were doing live traffic for 4 days. It was just a once in a lifetime thing.
So Lauri, let's talk about your work with the sheriff's office then. You started out working on the Super Bowl, right?
Started out working on the Super Bowl, got an invitation to stick around.
Yeah, I would bet, because you did an amazing job. So let's talk about what things did you, coming in there, not knowing the job itself and then learning it as you went. What are some things that you found that were surprising and some things that you found that were particularly easy?
I love that. And let me share this. So law enforcement, I don't have that background, but I had the absolute privilege, and I think this is critical for anybody that's going to be a spokesperson for a government agency. You must have the trust and confidence and the endorsement of your elected or appointed leader. In other words, when the sheriff walked into that first staff meeting and said, if she asks you a question, it is as if I have asked the question. And what that empowered me to do was really learn everything, ask tough questions, because as PIOs, we're often asked to package messages and we don't have the depth and the breadth of the knowledge that our subject matter experts do. And we certainly deserve to know all the risks, the pros, the cons, so that we can be that most trusted advisor. And I have found where a lot of people have their challenges professionally. And as I've gotten older, Robert, I like giving back. So I help people with resumes and I help connect people with job openings. And I just love doing that. I'm in that point in my career where I really want to serve others as much as possible. And what I find is a lot of people get told, we need to do this. But the minute they say, why, what's your thinking? Here are the upsides, here are the downsides. Are you aware we haven't polled? We haven't done informal polling. Are you aware that the public's not really with you on this issue, and there's education that needs to be done? So any success I had was attributable to three things: the leadership that I worked for, the autonomy that I was given to hire PIOs, train people, develop a department, help build policies. Public records policies are enormously important. Social media policies. We became encrypted on our radios while I was at the sheriff's office, and we had to bring in the media and take our radios back. You can Google it. It made national news. So educating people constantly, that's the second thing, was given that empowerment. And then the third thing was the trust and confidence of the people you work with. And that's a 360 thing. I had wonderful police officers, because I do believe that guns and badges, standing up and speaking into the mic, is way more important when you're talking about crime than a civilian. And as a civilian, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I'll hold my thought. Finish up.
So a civilian managing sworn people can be very challenging, because try as I may, I will never, ever be an accredited law enforcement officer. But conversely, if there's a mutual respect and an understanding that try as they may, they will never have the breadth of understanding of what the media expects from public agencies that I have.
So let me ask you this: for the sheriff's office that you worked for, how many people worked for you?
I had, when we were cranking on both burners, 2 full-time police public information officers, and then a person who worked, a civilian that was back office. So there was a lot of ceremonial activity. There's a lot of website activity, all of that communication, traditional communication generalist kind of work. And then when things rose to a level where they were impacted by the administration, in other words, things on a policy level, major crimes. We had a school shooting, unfortunately, kidnappings. We had a high murder rate. The sheriff would ask me to be the lead. So we bounced back and forth. The other advantage I had was I was single at the time. And so for Christmases, I can take call. and give my folks an opportunity to be home with their families. So I think we struck a really beautiful balance. I had the privilege of working with some very talented people. They learned from me, I learned from them. And at the end of the day, the most important thing was that the sheriff had the trust and confidence in us to go out there and tell the truth and tell it timely.
All right, so Lori, were you involved in anything that with Hurricane Katrina when that hit that area?
That's funny. It's not funny because now I live where Katrina hit. I live in Ground Zero, and I work with people every day that came back from Katrina. At the time, we got the mutual aid contract, and we put together the convoy that actually came over, because you know how FEMA works. I mean, regions help regions. So Houston, folks from the Texas area came to Louisiana, and folks from Florida came to Mississippi. And it's so funny to now be living what I did from the other end, because we put together the convoy and they came over and they actually ran Pearl River County, which was, if you look on the maps, where the Pearl River meets the Mississippi, is considered by many experts to have been ground zero. So our fine folks from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office ran Pearl River County for quite a while.
Oh, wow.
And that was amazing. Then I move here, and the first thing that happens is, people start coming up to me and saying, "Oh, you're from Jacksonville. They sent food." And, it's the home of Firehouse Subs. So they sent the 18-wheeler and the food. And so there's just this beautiful connection.
All right. So let me ask you this, since you brought it up earlier about politics and that you were involved in the campaign for the sheriff's office. How does a political environment impact your ability to do your job and still maintain ethical government communication, as well as maintain your personal and your professional integrity?
So I get a call every week or two from a colleague somewhere in the country who says, "I've got to start looking. We had an election and I'm out." Now, any appointment comes with the understanding that you serve at the pleasure of, but it behooves every elected or appointed official to use the power to hire the best, the most expert people they can hire, and not the best friend's goddaughter that just got a journalism degree. And I don't say that with any rancor or with any malice. It's just the fact of the matter is we have very capable, wonderful colleagues who lose positions simply because somebody owes somebody a favor and they want to be a PIO, and soon they're appointed
Right.
to be the PIO. It's a sad truth. I benefited from my experience and my training because my appointment was because I had done this for so long and had done it for others. But everybody deserves to gain experience. But I don't think being on the hot seat as a lead spokesperson for a government agency when you don't have your chops, whether that's in news or it's having been a PIO, is necessarily a good thing for an agency.
Okay, great.
So you know what they say, Robert? They say go to work every day like you're ready to go to work somewhere else the next day.
That's good.
Because in the world of political appointments or at-will employment, I mean, that's just a reality.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, let me just touch on the ethics piece.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to work for somebody that you don't completely trust, and you don't trust to be honest, then you have a problem. And it's definitely time to update the resume and go do something else. You and I both know people, we're not going to sit here and name names, who left positions because they were asked to go out publicly and say something that they knew just wasn't true, or some variation of the truth, which is equally unacceptable.
Absolutely.
And so that's why we are so offended by terms like spin doctor and all those stupid things that are said about us. But the sad truth of it is, people have mortgages and they have kids in college, and sometimes they'll swallow a plate of it and they'll go do it, and they shouldn't. And so we constantly have to remind people. That's part of the discussion you and I had offline about certifications and accreditations, why it's so important that we make sure PIOs all over the country know about these free classes that are available to them at FEMA, for example, at EMI, because ethics has to be imbued deeply in the profession. Everybody doing what we do has to believe that if you're asked to lie, it's time to say no.
I agree. Absolutely. Yep. And you have to have some strong will to survive that. And if you have a good leader and you say, these are the reasons why I can't say that and why it's unethical for me to say that, if they understand it enough and you've explained it thoroughly, you may win that battle.
You may. And conversely, as a trusted advisor, you've got to speak that truth to power. And it's tough to be in a room of very important people. And I'll give you a great example. It was following one of the hurricanes, and forgive me, I have to look at a list because we had so many hurricanes and close calls in Florida. But one of the things that most impressed me, and I will say this, they do emergency management brilliantly. They do it very well here in Mississippi too. I'm very fortunate to be affiliated in both places. But I saw the most amazing thing. So we had evacuated the beaches for a hurricane, and Governor at the time, Rick Scott, had a superpower. He would call these mayors, and he was working the phones constantly. What do you need? What do you need? How can I help? And it's what a good leader does, right? Ask their people what they can do to help. And you're in a room with very powerful, important people, and you're asked a question. And at the time, the question was, what do we need to do? And I made the comment to my commander, we evacuate them when we absolutely know we have to, but we've got to get them back just as quickly as we can, or they won't trust us the next time and leave. And it's one of the things in emergency management you're always mindful of. And you just have to have the compunction. You just have to have the will to say that in a room. When you're a PIO and you're sitting at at that command table, you have to always be ready to speak the truth to power. And even if it's, hey, I don't think this is a good time for this, and here's why, or even if it's an offline conversation and you leave the room, if you make sure somebody in an authority position knows your most qualified, knowledgeable opinion on that subject.
Right. Hey, Lauri, let's talk about brand discipline and why it's so important in today's world, and why government agencies need to understand the importance of their brand.
Yes, sir. Well, brand discipline. So that's another nice word that has so many different interpretations and meanings. I watch the NLRB very closely, the National Labor Relations Board, because we have watched them kind of swing on the pendulum of what people who work for government can and cannot say on social media. And we're watching terrible social media policies be written, and then we're watching, some get blown up. And it's coming down to what our mamas taught us. Don't say anything you don't want to see on the front page of the paper. I mean,
right.
It's just pretty much that simple. So if you've got employees that don't have the comportment and the discipline to understand what a code of conduct is all about, remember, it doesn't matter if you're online or on the phone or in front of an audience. You've got to conduct yourself as a representative of the organization. And when you don't, there should be penalties or education for that. So when we talk about brand discipline, I think we don't do a very good job of teaching non-marketing, non-PR, non-communications professionals what our brand really is. Because I'll use it in a law enforcement context. Every single person who carries a gun and a badge, or works in corrections, or works for an agency somewhere, needs to understand that they are the brand. What people see from them is that conduct every day. And they don't understand that the embodiment of our values is really what dictates what our brand is.
Yep.
It's not
Absolutely.
Somebody standing on high saying, this is our brand. It's the men and women that answer the phones at the hospital that determine who wants to call that doctor or who wants to admit a loved one. It's
Right.
a front line thing, and people do not understand that's the brand.
It's tough to explain to people, especially in law enforcement, because they think, well, we're a police department. What do we have to worry about our brand? And And the reality of it is your brand is what your department, your staff does every day out on the street, and how they engage the community. And you could say we're transparent, we're honest, we're trustworthy. But if you're doing things on the street that are contradictory to that, your brand is lost.
So I'm going to bring it full circle for you. I'm coming back to Super Bowl, right? So fast forward, it's game day, and we're up in the. I'm invited up into the roost where the NFL commissioner, in the media center and everything. This is a big deal. This is a Super Bowl, and I'm in the back of the room, and of course you hear the commentators, and we put every officer through. I'm going to call it charm school. But I have the opportunity to do training with the undersheriff. And we go and we do these trainings and we talk about how we wanted to be perceived on the world stage. Mm-hmm. And it must have sunk in because all of a sudden, one of the commentators said, they said Jacksonville couldn't pull it off. Isn't this a beautiful venue? Isn't this a great town? And the other commentator said, aren't the cops really nice? And I looked across the room and there's my sheriff, of course, beaming. And the owners of the team and all of it. It was just a beautiful moment. It can be taught, and it should be taught.
And when you do it right, and you get that kind of reaction, what a payoff that is, isn't it?
You can't buy that kind of advertising, and that was my opportunity to explain the difference between earned media and paid media. It's like, see, you guys earned this. You earned it. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so Lauri, let me throw this one out there. How can agencies best be prepared to effectively respond to that negative engagement on social media? And then when should they stand still and say nothing? And when should they engage?
Wow, Robert, listen, this is something that we're going to debate until the end of time.
Yep.
But my simple belief is this. If the agency has invested well in its public affairs professionals and they understand social media, and that means continuous education, they've built their dashboards, they know how to learn who is stalking them and the actual, I hate to say it, but the impact, the value that those negative people bring to the table. If they know how to respond to negativity with the courteous answer, hey, let's talk about this offline if you're truly troubled. Don't forget, there's a lot of keyboard cowboys out there, and they just want to be contrarians and they just want to be difficult. And there are ways to test and measure whether the response only makes it worse, right? So you've got to have that skill set in your public affairs professionals that they can, again, advise leadership and say, I saw it and we have a good policy in place and I have every right to take it down. And I'm going to take it down and I'm going to work the backlash because it was offensive, it was derisive, it was whatever your policy says it cannot be. We've got to be good about monitoring our own channels. And unfortunately, we don't have staffs. We don't have the money sometimes. But if you're on Twitter, then you got to be on Twitter. And that means you've got to be responding to people. It can't be one-way communication.
Right.
So if you're good at it, if your agency's committed to being good at this, then they're training their people and they're investing in them to get more education and do the right thing and be smart about it. And then there's always a good time to bring in legal and to just say, at what point do we go after this guy, especially in law enforcement? And that's where your crime analysts are so incredibly valuable. We worked hand in hand with crime analysts because it was amazing how we would go out on social media looking for tips and assistance from the public. And people that are on social media were directly connected to those involved in the crimes.
Right.
I mean, we got a lot of good tips. You got to be mining all the time and responding. And you got to talk to legal. You definitely have to bring legal into the picture.
So being responsive and being approachable is important because those people that are one direction, those agencies that are only talking to the public and not listening and engaging, that's detrimental, right?
They're not getting any numbers. Look at what they're getting, right? And then making matters worse, if you're omnidirectional and so you're not really engaging with people. And I'm not saying you have to be cute and clever, and people don't have to show a lot of personality. I mean, you're law enforcement. We have to trust you.
Right.
That's important. Not that you can't show officers having fun when you do your feature tweets and you do your feature posts, but you have to have the comportment that says to the public, you can trust me. Well, what do they trust the most? They trust that you're going to be truthful, and they trust that you're going to be timely.
Right.
And when you put something out after it's been sanitized, we don't do a very good job of training on, or let's say we don't do a very good job of training each other to put a placeholder in it. We have police activity on 12th Street at Claiborne Circle. We ask the public to avoid the area. We will be setting up staging for media shortly.
Right.
And making it incumbent on every leader in the organization to be ready to go to the mic and train them for that.
Right.
So when people, they can trust that you're truthful and you're timely, and that brings transparency, right? That's the equation. So once they trust that you really are transparent, and that means breaking your own bad news first, Robert, and everybody is scared to break their own bad news first. And I was taught by a very wise leader, when you mess up, it's time to dress up and fess up. So the sooner you get it's true. It's an old Southern accent.
I agree.
So the
100%.
sooner you get out there with your own bad news, the more it's not about controlling the narrative. It's about being trusted.
Right.
We can count on them to tell us when they screw up. It feels simple. I know it's not, but it feels simple.
All right, Lori, let's change gears with rapid fire questions here.
Woo, woo.
Texting and talking, or talking, I should say. Texting or talking.
Oh, you tell me. What do you think? I'm a talker.
You're a talker, definitely. Place you most want to travel to?
Prom.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite adult beverage?
Right now it's unsweet tea. I'm on the program.
Okay. Well, what superpower would you have if you could have one?
If I had a superpower, it would be to dole out money more wisely. It would be in the government grants arena.
Nice.
Because I think we missed the boat on who needs and who wants.
True. A must-read book in your mind.
Oh my gosh. So Leslie Jordan passed away, and I love Leslie Jordan.
Yeah.
So I downloaded the book yesterday. How y'all doing? It's great. It's great. I'm laughing.
Love it. Name something you could eat for a week straight.
Barbecued spare ribs.
Ooh, that sounds good. Ask permission or ask for forgiveness?
I love my law enforcement people, so I'm going the permission route.
There you go. All right, Lori, any key points you'd like to let our listeners know from today's interview?
I want you to tell me how I did.
You did awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Okay.
Love
That's
it.
all that matters.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, other than when you have the opportunity, get certifications, get accredited, keep learning, be what my good friend and former boss, Dr. J. Brooks Brown, said, be a lifelong learner. So we build this profession and make it great by making ourselves better and by helping others. So every chance you get, take a class, get online, share information, and join a trade association. I cannot tell you how powerful it is to be with colleagues and go somewhere and do something. And if you can't go to a conference, go virtually, but grow yourself every single day in this profession, because none of us are that good that we can't learn from somebody else.
Absolutely. Lori, how can people best reach out to you if they want to connect or follow up with anything you said?
I love LinkedIn. I'm on it. Lauri-Ellen Smith. I'm on Twitter, and I'm at Cat5 crisiscom at Gmail. And LinkedIn is my fave. I'm nuts for LinkedIn.
And I will add all of that into the show notes. Lori, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Robert, for having me. What fun.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.